I am here with the second prize winner in the Christopher Tower Poetry Competition 2025, Aurora Haselfoot Flint, whose poem The God Tree struck me and my fellow judges for its viscerality, its musicality, these brilliant hard rhythms that really stick in the mind, and also these fantastic, complex and yet very primal images, deer pelts and honeysuckled babes and that kind of thing, stomachs loose and pregnant, the kind of thing that I really look for in poems that I read and sometimes poems that I publish. And I'd be very interested in hearing a little bit about what the influences are behind this poem and its music and its imagery and how it began.
Firstly, thank you so much. It's an amazing opportunity. But my poem, so I wrote it mainly for the Tower Poetry Competition, but also it's the final poem in an anthology I submitted for my school's creation anthology competition. We did a poetry soiree reading for it, but because we've been studying Ted Hughes in class and specifically his crow poems and that creation anthology, and I just was really struck by the way that he uses that viscerality to kind of twist what would be a typical creation myth an idea to what he views it as, and I mean, but also further than that, it's something that I've been kind of exploring on my own for a while. Just the idea that spirituality you don't have to believe in it for it to have genuine meaning. And just the exploration of perhaps God, or this idea of a kind of magic or Mother Nature or whatever you might call it, in so many different things, in everything, but also, and in this one, in a tree, because there was a photograph that I saw online, which I tried to find the source of, but I couldn't, which inspired this. It's of a tree that looks like a woman, and it kind of tangentially inspired this, and actually the cover of it is a drawing of something similar to that. And it inspired just this idea of just the female body in nature, especially since spirituality and God has been so masculinized by Western society. And I was also really inspired by just the general movement of so many women in taking back the pagan ideas, and I mean with the Wiccan and tri goddesses, and even Hellenic paganism and stuff, and people just trying
so much in here.
Yeah, it's just I think a collection of what I've experienced and what I kind of hold in reverence as a person.
Yeah, and on that then, how did you come to poetry as a way of expressing these ideas? It makes sense to me that you mentioned Ted Hughes. One of the poems that I thought of when I read this was his Little Blood from Crow.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, is that it? Sort of reading poets whose work really strikes you, that has similar themes in mind? Is there anything else that's drawn you to it in particular?
Yes, I mean, I've written poetry for as long as I can remember. I actually the first poetry competition I was shortlisted in was when I was 8 years old for a Queen Elizabeth I poetry competition in Oxford, and it was a under 12s competition, 12 and under competition, and I got shortlisted, and I read my poem here in Oxford, so it almost feels like full circle. But I've written I've written, because I'm a musician, I've written songs since I was quite young as well. And then when I was in my early teens, I met my best friend and started dabbling in protest poetry and spoken word, especially feminist poetry. And then through that, I kind of honed my poetry and my kind of taste for metaphor and wordplay. And I mean, just through reading Shakespeare and Ocean Vuong and all these different poets. I mean, I recently got a book of Margaret Atwood's poetry. It's the collection called Paper Boat, I think.
Yes,
and
her
I've been reading
stuff.
that. It's
yeah,
lovely. Everything is an inspiration, I think. And I just love how poetry, you can say things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to say in prose. And I find that sometimes when I can't say what exactly I mean, I just find myself devolving into song or poetry.
Yeah. I'll ask you one more short question in connection with that, which is you mentioned metaphors and wordplay, and sort of that's evidently from the poem very important to you and the way you compose. And I wonder if you could just say something briefly about how you conjure these images.
Well, I have one of my main methods of working is I have just a notes app on my phone where I just write down. Sometimes it'll just come to me 3 a.m. or just like walking and just get like a little bit of wordplay, and often it comes to nothing. But sometimes with the honeysuckled babe thing, I have honeysuckle growing in my garden, and I've always loved it, like the way you can kind of just taste a little bit of sweetness. And I just love the idea of like playing on every single facet of that. And I mean, I've always been like so inspired by obviously like the great poet Shakespeare and how he uses wordplay to, I mean, bring forth this like political narrative, but also like socio-political and also just the beauty of the way he uses it. And just in so many poets, I think wordplay is such an important thing because I also am somebody who's really interested in linguistics. So also when they were talking about how like the word roots, like the etymology of the word roots, and how it's connected by the Latin root to radical, is just something like in one of my other poems that I wrote for this anthology, I wrote something about ramifications, which is also comes from the Latin branching, which I just thought was really cool.
Yeah, and that kind of knowledge of the depth of words does come through in this poem. I'd like to invite you to read The God Tree for us now.
Thank you. Yes. The God Tree. Hey, God Tree. Curl your roots around my body, God Tree, girl tree. I, your honeysuckled babe, am here, here with the deer pelt and the undergrowth. See me down at your feet, God Tree. You with your peeling skin, your thighs like tree trunks, your stomach loose and pregnant. Swollen God Tree, a bowl as two, no insect too small to crawl between your skin flakes and burrow a home. Give of me the fruit and I will eat in bloody ecstasy, mother and daughter, hag and babe. Fear not the lathe, God Tree, your every limb a gift for my knife, my fleeting body the feed for your trough. Dig into me, knife and fork and xylem, pierce my aching bones and suck the marrow. You bled, I bleed, I suckle, you suckle. God Tree, mother-daughter, tangled willow whip hair and naked form, bare feet and begging hearts, unstunted and singing, roots splayed wide and open.
Thank you.
Thank you.